Hello everyone. Now finally in this video we'll get to see how to host a web service using Pulumi. But firstly you need to have these four variables in your config.env file. ECR will contain your ARN of the ECR repository that you'll be creating on AWS. Now this will have the repo name, cluster name, and this part will have the ID, security group ID that you will create. Now, before you start with this hosting of ECS Fargate service, make sure you watch this video because it's important for you to understand how to host it before you actually host it using Pulumi, right? So just watch this video before you actually proceed. Now, these are the routes. These are the ones for web service. Let me just add the functions. Cool. And this is the function. So web service is simply the way we did it for static sites. So that's the same format. We'll be sending the repositories and the state is new. Okay. Now this is the host web service. Everything is pretty much the same. The way we had host static site function in the last video. The only difference here is that we'll be creating two new files. Okay. One is the Docker file and one is config.json. So this is config.json. We'll be creating a JSON file that will contain all our env vars. Okay, env vars and a new env which is port. So I'm setting the port as 80, which is the default HTTP port. That's the env, and this is the Docker file contents. So we have from, let's say I have a Node.js file, okay, Node.js application. So it will be something like from node latest copy and whatever the directory it is. So copy slash to slash app, and run will be node server.js, and cmd will be node server.js, and run is npm install. So that is the build command. So that's the only difference in host static and host web service functions. So once we create the Docker file and config.json files, we'll be passing all these details in the name of the folder. Now, in the last video, I forgot to explain this function to you. So this is the Pulumi, um, methods to do this thing programmatically. Like via CLI, we can make use of Pulumi up, and that's it. But you want to run node server.js and Pulumi up, right? You want to run two commands at the same time. So you can't actually do that via CLI. So that's what this code does. So instead of you having to use the CLI, you can do this via code itself. So this up is update. This is the Pulumi up part, right? It has many different functions like refresh or cancel, destroy, all of these functions. See, refresh, right? So there are many other functions that you can explore, but this part is for Pulumi up, right? And now we have Pulumi program. Again, we can't send pass any parameters to this thing. It won't work. So after we fetch all these details from the name of the file, name of the folder that is, I'm getting the repository from this. We had the ECR repo name, right, in the config.env file. So I'm just fetching that particular repository under the variable repo. So this is the variable. Now this part is very, very important. Okay. Like you can't just skip this part. It won't work without the credentials. So make sure that you have the credentials. Copy paste this code as it is. Now once you have the credentials, then you can, create a new Docker image. Everything will work. So this is the part where we are actually creating a new Docker image and pushing it in the registry. So this is the get cluster part. If you don't write async true, okay, then you every time you have to do something like cluster dot then and then some other object, and then you can make use of that k dot something else. Okay, if you don't write async true, if you write this as async true, you can directly fetch the properties of that cluster object, right? ARN, ID, everything. So we are creating a new application load balancer and a new log group. It doesn't work if you don't create a new log group. So make sure you do these two things at least, like without fail. And then I'm reading the JSON. The reason I'm doing this is because we have to pass the JSON in environment. Okay. Now, this, I'll show you where you can get this from, this entire thing. It's present inside the details of the task definition. We'll see once we get there. So I'm creating a new service, and yeah, so we'll be fetching the load balancer's DNS name, and we have already discussed what dot apply is in the last video. So yeah, like it simply returns a promise, right? So you need the DNS name, so you make use of dot apply. You can check out my last video. A lot of the concepts have already been discussed. And since the state is new, we are adding it inside the database. Cool. Make sure that you have your Docker desktop running. Have this, it's running. Yeah, but we forgot to do one thing, right? We forgot to add it in the config bar. So let me just add that. Pulumi config set. You can find this inside your settings and resources, network. So this is the Docker subnet. Now let's do this again. Hopefully it will work this time. Let me submit. Okay, no problem. It says another update is currently in progress, so let's just cancel it. We type demo and run this again. So we got the image. Let's go back. Okay, so we got the DNS name. Let's refresh this. Uh, it's not yet added into the database. Meanwhile, we just copy this. Yeah, you'll get this because again, everything is still working in the backend. The resources are still being allocated to your service. So just wait for 1 or 2 minutes. So once you refresh, you get the output. So hello world, this is Shreya, and I wanted to show you the task definition. Now, if you see the task definition that you just deployed over ECS, so when you come to JSON, so this is the exact thing that we wrote over here in this part, the service part. So cluster, public IP, definition args, port mappings. So port mappings, and then we have environment. So these are the env vars. You see all of that is the same as in the JSON of task definition. So you can check that out, and yeah, you'll get that 503 error, but after some time you will get this as the output. So yeah, thanks for watching, and in the next video we'll discuss how to edit these services. So see you in the next one.